There's also been espionage, sabotage, and an assassination attempt linked to Russia across Europe. Philip Mudd is with us, former counterterrorism official in the CIA and FBI. Philip, I guess the biggest question to start with, right, is are the Russians doing in America what they're already doing in Europe?
I wouldn't count that out, especially if you're at the FBI and it's the FBI's responsibility to follow the Russians here. One of the surprises I was thinking about when you were speaking was going back, if you think this is a new phenomenon, it's not. It was going back nearly 20 years. The murder of Litvinenko, who was an oppositionist, a former intelligence officer, an oppositionist in the UK, in England. He was murdered by KGB agents using plutonium. This is, if I remember right, 2006. So if it's going to happen in the UK 18 years ago by the same regime, sitting there in Washington saying it can never happen here, I wouldn't count on that at all.
Yeah, and look, Vladimir Putin is in a really pickle right now because you've got Syria that he had put so much effort into falling, Iran that he invested so much into now getting squeezed and backing down with Donald Trump coming in. Mexico just announced the largest seizure of fentanyl in history. You weren't trained, nor I, to believe in coincidences. How much of this world changing that we're seeing has to do with the fact that Donald Trump takes office now in 6 weeks?
I'm not sure that I would tie it to Donald Trump at all. And I'm not sure I would agree with your assessment. If I'm looking at the world, my job when I was at the CIA was to look at the world through the opposition's eyes, through the eyes of the adversary. The primary rule there is not to mirror image. That is not to think that the adversary thinks like you do. If I'm an American sitting in the seat that you're sitting in, I'd say life is rough for Putin. If I'm in Putin's seat, I'm saying, look, I moved into Ukraine, and it looks like I might have an American government coming in that says that we can negotiate that. I've got North Korean troops there. There's an alliance. I got the Americans getting a little bit sideways over the course of decades with the Chinese. That's to the Russians' advantage. I've got alliances with important players who can ship oil. That's the Iranians. So I think if I'm looking at the incidents you talked about, Leland, and looking at through the eyes of the adversary, I might say, why wouldn't I continue doing this? Maybe it works.
Well, look, there was the TV show The Americans, one of my favorite shows about the Russian illegals in the United States. There's no reason, right, if you're Putin, to not do this in the United States?
Well, I would take it a step further. If you're in the intelligence business, going back to the Cold War years, you used to run agents out of embassies. Classic operation, have somebody who's under what you call undercover in an embassy, somebody who's a cultural officer, who's actually a CIA guy who worked with people like me. If you go into the 21st century, one of the most interesting things I saw at the FBI when I transitioned to the FBI from the CIA was what's called out-of-embassy operations. That is, if you want to steal from Silicon Valley, if you want to steal from a university doing defense research, why would you operate out of Washington? You'd be a student. You'd be a professor. You'd be an investor. You'd be a businessman. So these kinds of operations you saw in the Americans are 21st century espionage, not stuff out of embassies, Leland.
Where does this go for Vladimir Putin? You thought we see what's happening in Syria. I think that is meaningful. You see the Iranians changing. You see the plates moving. What is the old saying about a crisis is both danger and opportunity?
Yes.
And a change of a U.S. administration. Is that danger or opportunity for Vladimir Putin?
Opportunity. I go back again, mentioning Ukraine. If you had said a few years ago that Vladimir Putin would lose so many soldiers and still be sitting there saying, I might win this because the Americans will negotiate me out. In other words, will give me a chance to keep some Ukrainian territory. You'd say, you got to be kidding me. You mean the Americans are going to accept Russia redrawing lines in Europe? That's an opportunity for Iran. North Korean troops, opportunity. America sort of confronting China, opportunity. So I look at this, if I'm Vladimir Putin saying, I want to reestablish the empire. The Americans have dissed us since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Keep rolling. It's going to work.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.